In this video, I wanted to give just some verbal instruction about this part two of your lesson plan. So you've done part one, which was your learning objective, rationale, etc. So one, make sure you go back and you review feedback from the lesson plan submission one feedback and make those corrections for your submission two. So you're not recreating new lessons, you're adding on to the existing lesson that you've already created and submitted for submission one. So now you're just adding to that information. So you will be taking those same learning objectives and TEKs and using those to create your process and the additional information for submission two. So a couple of points that I want to reiterate. I have written them here in the written instructions, but just wanted to verbalize as well. First, you need to make sure that your process really covers that learning objective. The learning objective is what's guiding your process to begin with, and the students should be constantly kind of coming back to that point. So all of your things that you're doing inside of your process should be strategic to that learning objective. Again, it needs to cover about an hour. So outside of each step, you'll need to put in parentheses the approximate amount of time that it would take for that particular step. So that's one thing that you're going to put next to that step. The other thing that you're going to put next to the step is the learning style. So you have visual, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic. Okay, well, where is that occurring inside of that lesson plan? So yes, you may, highlight or bold the learning styles that you're going to be using, but also show me in parentheses outside the steps where those learning styles are occurring. So make sure you're doing those two things outside of the steps. And again, your steps should be so specific that I could follow it if I were your sub. So make sure they're pretty clear and that you've provided me with enough detail. The other part that's really important is the classroom strategies. So it used to be that I would require papers for cooperative learning strategies. Now I'm having you integrate those into your lesson plans. So one of your lesson plans must include a cooperative learning strategy. It could be one of the ones that I went over in one of the previous modules. It could be one that you find on your own. But when you incorporate the cooperative learning strategy inside your lesson plan, it needs to be pretty specific on how you're using it. So you can't just say think, pair, share, or quiz, quiz, trade and be done. Tell me specifically what's happening. What are the students? Students are doing this and then doing this, as if you were explaining it to a student. Again, if I was your sub, I would need enough detail to know how to implement that cooperative learning strategy. So you have to use a cooperative learning strategy inside one of your lesson plans. You also need to incorporate at least one other strategy that's within that classroom strategies document. So I have things like technology integration, centers, discussion strategies. So you do have to use one of those other techniques. And again, it has to be pretty specific. So with technology integration, it can't just be I'm showing a 3-minute YouTube clip at the beginning and that's technology integration. No. So technology integration is something where you're actually using technology to teach that objective. So not just as an introduction, are you using them to actively participate with the technology to learn something more about that objective? Same thing with discussion. You can't just say discussion. It's got to be a specific discussion technique. And so I've provided some of those techniques in these modules for you. And just like with the cooperative learning strategy, you have to kind of piece out detail by detail how those are going to be used. So the biggest name of the game when I'm looking in this submission two is, again, does your process reflect your learning objective? Does it reflect the level of blooms? And are you incorporating some of these other pieces like classroom strategies, cooperative learning strategies? Are you correctly identifying what those learning styles are next to the numbers? So with these lesson plans, just make sure you are looking at each one of these steps very carefully and closely to make sure you're integrating the things, the requirements that are there. And then just like with submission one, I'll evaluate those pieces that are required and give you feedback.